Okay, welcome back to Dear Oakland. Today we have with us Tunde. He's a founder and an entrepreneur. Please
Cool.
introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Akintunde Ahmad. Tunde is what I go by. Born and raised here in Oakland. Actually, fourth generation Oakland. So my great grandfather migrated here from Negrette, Louisiana, in like the 40s to work at the San Francisco port, like a lot of black families. And that's on my mom's side. My dad's from Texarkana, Texas. Moved to East Palo Alto in his middle high school year. So Bay Area on both sides of the family. And yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so how has your experience been living in Oakland?
You know, it's changed over time. So like I said, I'm born and raised here. Went to Oakland Public Schools, K through 12. I went to Chabot Elementary, which is not my neighborhood school, but my mom was an educator for OUSD for 30 years. She just left. She was a kindergarten teacher for about 15 and then became a principal of Piedmont Avenue Elementary, not to be confused with Piedmont, which is its own separatist school district and city and police department and fire department. Piedmont Avenue is an Oakland public school. And I just note that to say, when she took over, they had actually the highest population of black males of any Oakland public elementary school in the city. So I just make that distinguishment so when folks hear Piedmont, there's like things that are associated with it that aren't necessarily true for the students that she served. But I said that to say, graduated Oakland Public Schools, Chabot Elementary, Montero Middle School, Oakland Tech High School, and over the years, my time living in Oakland has shifted a lot. There's a range of things that have changed. A lot of unique experiences that I had growing up that now looking at like the next generation in my family. I'm the youngest of 6, so I have, in the Bay Area, I have 9 nieces and nephews. I have others in other parts of the country, but just seeing the experiences that we had that they'll never get the opportunity to have. Seeing folks who can no longer afford to live in the city, seeing the spillover into Antioch, Pittsburgh, places like Sacramento, and how you have pockets of the Bay Area. Just kind of shifting as well and understanding those trends has been interesting. But overall, I wouldn't trade my upbringing for anything. I mean, I grew up in a range of different communities that I think were very unique to the Bay Area. My parents were heavily involved in Pan-Africanist community. My mom got an education teaching first with the Black Muslim Bakery. My family was in the Nation of Islam, which is why my last name is Ahmad. Prior to me being born, by the time I came around, they weren't really involved anymore. But she started teaching there, and she taught at a Pan-African center school in Deep East Oakland on 90th and Holly called Ile Emode. And I think, before, I don't know, now people will call folks hoteps or whatever type of things they want to like categorize things out. Like they were like the early folks who were really on that type of timing, who, it came out of cultural movements, came out of the 70s and the Black Power movement, came out of protesting apartheid, came out of all of these things and really wanted to, just have a stronger cultural connection. And so a lot of times based on my name and things, people are like, oh, okay, like you first gen Nigerian, you second gen Nigerian. And I'm like, I'm not, though I have a lot of love for West African culture, and we'll get into that later, but I just make that distinguishment to say, like, I'm also African American. I'm a descendant of this transatlantic slave trade, amongst other things. And so, understanding that, I just think it's important to kind of set that context.
You said that there were special experiences that you've had growing up in Oakland that you feel like your nieces and nephews won't have the opportunity to experience. Yep. Can you highlight one or two of those that were like special or meaningful to you?
Yeah, for example, it's always funny because a lot of people hear that like baseball was my main sport and they're surprised because over the years, like it's very hard statistics that support this, but like the amount of African Americans, and I'm not saying folks from the diaspora, obviously there are a lot of Afro-Latinos from the DR and Cuba and places who are playing in the major leagues, but the numbers have dwindled, like have decreased. It's like, it used to be like 20% of players, 30% of players, and now it's like less than 5% of players. It's probably like 10 total African American players in Major League Baseball. But if you ask anybody who's actually from Oakland, and specifically actually from East Oakland, we all grew up playing at a place called Greenman Field, which is right in between like the 65th, 69th villages. I'm right there. Havens Court is the school technically, but it's like on 66 and International, depending on which way you enter it. by Axel Gospel Church, but it was a field, 4 baseball fields, and everybody in East Oakland grew up playing there. Every year in April, we'd have an opening day starting at Concordia Park, which is like around the corner from Frick Middle School, but also in Deep East Oakland. In the 60s, they cut off the streets, the fire department and the police department, everybody would do the escorts, and it would be thousands of people, it would be thousands of kids, and it would be thousands of parents and supporters and everybody like for that launch day. And then for the rest of the season, every Saturday and Sunday, it's at least 1,500, 2,000 people. So the league was over 90% black. The Latino population has increased in Oakland. So depending on what time, you may have had more, more Latino folks participating as well. But we were really part of something that was super special. And so for us, it was like a community building. I didn't think of it as community building. I just thought of it as I'm a kid who's playing sports, and there are businesses that are sponsoring these sports. Whether it was, Everett Jones is right here. They had a team. The Kappa's fraternity had a team. Elihu Harris, who was mayor back in the day, had a team. Law firms like John Burris's law firms would sponsor teams. So it was like the community came together to make sure that we had an opportunity to play this sport. And then, of course, baseball is a heavy sport that involves like a lot of, you got umpires, but it was like once you turn 13, you could train how to become an umpire, and then you could get paid to become an umpire. And a lot of those folks went on to referee high school, to umpire high school games and have careers in that. And so it was this ecosystem that supported thousands and thousands of kids. And, when I went back and I was like, okay, my nephew was a playing age. He's trying to play, and like on opening day, they didn't have enough people to field one game against one another. So when I say like, what does gentrification mean to me? What does it mean that like, it means that there aren't enough black youth in the city to actually play this sport and have enough folks to field teams to play against each other. When we grew up, it was thousands of us. And you can Google Oakland Babe Ruth. I mean, it's well documented. I'm working on a project around the history of that right now. We've been, digitizing a lot of my family's VHS tapes and old coaches' VHS tapes, but like, they'll never have the opportunity to play that. They may not ever have the opportunity to play baseball in an environment that they'll enjoy because now the demographics of the sport have shifted so much. But that's just one example. I mean, growing up, another one is like every year you would have like the Black Cowboy Parade. Folks are surprised that I know how to ride horses, but on Skyline Boulevard, there was a dude named Mr. Smitty who had a stable who would give free or like reduced horseback riding lessons to black kids in the city. He moved once things changed. He went back south, and like you still see some folks who are involved with the Black Cowboy thing, but like we used to have parades every year that I have footage of that we would be doing. And it's like, people like, you play baseball, you ride horses, like it sounds like something white. And it's like, that was actually a very black activity that I did surrounded by all black people growing up, because we had a support system of people who were involved in those activities. And again, my nieces and nephews don't have that opportunity at all. So for me, it's like, you go to these places, you have very fond memories of these places, and then you're like, damn, it's not coming back. It's not happening no more.
Yeah, we talked to some folks on the podcast in some earlier episodes. We were talking about the ecosystem in Oklahoma and how they had black cowboys, and it was really prominent for black community and black culture there. And then I've volunteered on Black Joy Parade and SF Pride, and the volunteer coordinator, she was really involved in the Black Cowboy Parade here in Oakland back in the day, and her family would participate in all of this. And so it's so interesting to hear people take on like what that was like, what the experience was like, and what it's like now that the experience is no longer. Like, I don't know, I've been here for only 6 years, and I've never gotten to experience that in full, but I have seen the Black Cowboys and the Black Joy Parade. It's just a much smaller presence.
Yeah. I mean, stuff like even Black Joy Parade, that's like a newer thing. Like
6 years, 7 years.
Right. And so, and I think it's a shell of what I don't know if we was rolling, but the community interaction. No, but we were talking. So just prior to that, you were just telling me about
Black Cowboys,
and you were talking about Black Joy Parade, and
I know we were saying that was just a fraction of what the experience was like in Oakland.
Yeah. And I mean, the numbers tell the story as well, right? You look at how much the black population in the city has decreased and how quickly that's happened, and it's like, that tells the story in itself. Those experiences just aren't there because the people quite literally physically are not here anymore. It's like I said, it's sad overall. I think folks who are actually Oakland natives and who have been around for some time kind of feel these same things, but it's also like you meet people from Harlem or Brooklyn, they're going through the same thing,
Yeah.
right? You meet folks in certain parts of LA, they're going through the same thing. I think Oakland, though, and San Francisco as well, because San Francisco is often left out of this conversation because, their gentrification wave hit earlier because of their proximity to all the things that were happening in the Silicon Valley and the dot-com boom. But like I said, my grandfather didn't come out here to go to Oakland. He came out here to go to San Francisco port because that's where a lot of the jobs were. Then folks went to the Oakland port, and folks were, on both sides of it. And so, San Francisco folks have been getting pushed out in those historic districts and those historic jazz bars and all those things, which predates me as well. But like you hear stories from your older relatives and talking about places that they went, and you see these black and white photos of them dressed up, and I'm like, oh, where was this? And they're like, no, this was in San Francisco in 1960 or whatever it may be. And so, I just feel like every generation, every wave has experienced something different, and I feel like I've been on that last generation of folks who actually had like that authentic, like Black Oakland childhood. So, yeah.
I think this is a good segue to the next question, but how do you feel about the negative PR around Oakland?
I mean, it's interesting. I think the big side, so just for context, sociology is my background in undergrad. I did my master's in journalism, documentary film, and so written a lot about PR related to Oakland. I work with the Columbia Journalism Review. We do media criticism. That was like my first job out of grad school. So it was all about, is the media actually accurately depicting what's happening in places? And with me having an affinity towards my hometown, I took every opportunity I could to actually write about that or, try to address that in some way, shape, or form. And so it's interesting, right? I think a lot of the negative PR comes from the fact that right now, like Oakland is actually far more safe than it was when I was growing up. You look at the homicide rate and the murder rates. But the thing is, those homicides and murder rates, they're concentrated to a part of Oakland that if folks don't want to go there, they don't have to go there. When you're talking about Deep East Oakland, you're talking about East Oakland from 35th to whatever, 110th between San Leandro Boulevard and MacArthur Boulevard. Most people who have moved to Oakland in recent history, unless they moved to like the Fruitvale and are kind of by like the Diamond Park area, and even that, majority of that happens above MacArthur, don't really have a reason to be in those areas. But what has happened in recent history is that, due to long-standing economic issues, due to, again, a compounding amount of factors, the petty theft is what's up. But the thing is, nobody is safe from that, right? It doesn't matter if you're a millionaire venture capitalist who is parking in downtown Oakland or somebody who is struggling to make ends meet. Everybody's car window is getting broken into. Like, anybody's bag can get snatched or whatever it may be, and it's not that it's the actual physical threat of violence and like harm coming your way. It's not that that's actually increased. It's just that the prevalence of crime that is impacting all types of people is what has increased. And again, most of that is 16, 17-year-olds who is like, oh yeah, in 5 seconds, I can break your window, take your backpack and be gone. I'm not trying to hurt nobody in the process of this. I'm just hoping that I score and get a camera or a laptop or something that I can do. And so, people are like, man, the crime in Oakland is so bad. But it's like, realistically speaking, y'all aren't even in the areas where like the actual crime is happening. And that's another thing. Like, if you're somebody who is going to an Oakland public school, rather than, and I mean the big 6 Oakland public schools, I mean where I went, Oakland Tech, Oakland High, Skyline, McClymonds, Castlemont, Fremont, ask any black kid who was anywhere around my age or older, every year they've lost somebody to gun violence. Most of the people who are coming here talking about this has never lost anybody in Oakland to gun violence. But every year since as long as I can remember, because again, I'm the youngest out of 6. So if it wasn't my direct friend, it was one of my older direct friends, my older brother's direct friends who I've known. And that's just the norm. That's just what it is. And so for me, again, the perception of violence and crime and threats for me are different because I was a kid in the early 2000s when the murder rate was actually at its highest, and you were really seeing a lot of folks being lost. Because again, it was maybe 130 homicides, but if you're looking at, statistically speaking, the age range of those folks, the demographic breakdown of them, I'm likely to have proximity with them because they from East Oakland and played Oakland Babe Ruth baseball, or they played Oakland Dynamites football, or they played Oakland Rebels basketball, or they went to an Oakland public school as folks who are actually from Oakland and are more likely to live in these environments do. And so for me, I'm like, that's where it's coming from. But let me also be clear in saying this. The bipping is so annoying, and it is not something that growing up we were worried about. But it's like now you just got to move differently. I don't leave nothing in my car. I may leave my windows down, like all of those things. And it's just a preventative measure that you have to take. Don't get me wrong, that is hella annoying, and it is something that's real. But I think we need to make a clear differentiation between this is so dangerous that I'm actually fearful of like my physical safety, or this is just hella annoying that I've gotten my window broken and it's a financial burden and a time burden to have to get it fixed. So,
What do you think outsiders get wrong about Oakland? And how would you describe the city to someone who's never been?
oh man, I think outsiders get a lot of things wrong about Oakland. I have a lot of pride in where I'm from, and I think, you know, a lot of people kind of come to Oakland and attach to the historical legacy, but I see a lot of people trying to use that historical legacy for more of like selfish benefits and reasons. I think one of the things that people think oftentimes is that like, oh, I've been in Oakland and like I've integrated into the community, and I'm like, okay, well, cool. How many folks that you hang out with went to Oakland public school? A lot of times the answer is zero, right? How many folks do you know that, you know, have participated in these activities that I'm talking about? And it's like, you can build Black community in Oakland by networking with all the other folks who came here to work for Google or Facebook or Twitter or all of those things. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we got an ERG group. I know them. They bought a house in West Oakland. I bought a house in West Oakland. We get together. We have our own events. And then you see these things. And it's like, y'all aren't actually doing anything that is like historically relevant to Oakland. You may use some imagery and like, oh, we're going to put a Black Panther logo, or I'm going to wear a shirt with a fist on it, or whatever it may be. But it's like you aren't actually connecting with the people who have been here. And just because you are a Black person or a brown person or a person of color in any type of way doesn't mean that, oh, okay, like now I've gotten comfortable and acclimated. Like if you've never spent time in Deep East Oakland, because West Oakland is different now. West Oakland was the first place to get gentrified because of its proximity to San Francisco, right? West Oakland BART, one stop over, you're in San Francisco. And so that's how that flows. But it's like, yeah, I think folks get a lot of, that's like one big thing. And I think they're like, oh, I've like came to Oakland and like built community. And it's like, you've built a new community that is actually oftentimes very elitist and exclusive and not actually inclusive of folks. And I see those things play out and manifest in a lot of different ways. And you know, I won't say I straddle this fence, but it's interesting because like I said, I'm born and raised here. I went to Oakland Public Schools, but I went to Yale for undergrad and I did my master's at Columbia. And so I know folks who I went to college with who move out here. And I think different folks do a better job at it. I have friends who are actually from the South Side of Chicago who I met in school and then moved out, and they like, and they meet my friends and they become part of a different friend group because they're actively trying to like reach out to folks. And so again, it's pros and cons, but I mean, that's like one of the things. Like, I guess it's not exactly what folks get wrong about it, but it's just like the perception that folks come in to Oakland with that, you know, a lot of Oakland natives, then folks kind of like try and figure out like where this tension lies. And it's like, just because you're doing something that involves Black people or involves, again, some type of cultural, iconic legacy of Oakland doesn't actually mean that the folks who are from here have any respect for what you're doing or feel included in it, because a lot of times I've been to events where people are like, oh, like you should come to this thing, and I go and it's a room full of Black folks, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is like completely wrong. Like y'all just made this new insular community, and like you think that because I have the same whatever qualifications and pedigree that I'm going to gravitate towards this, but especially in my hometown, it's like I'm not. And then I brought my friends to certain things. Let's come to this event with me. Let's just check it out. And we both get there and we look and we're like, you ready to go? I'm ready to go. And so those things actually happen. And it's just kind of hard to get folks to understand why we feel that way when in their mind they're like, oh, I'm doing such a big, great thing. And I think some folks do a better job and others are actually, you know, integrating into the community. But I think, yeah, if you really want to be here and really want to do things like to actually benefit the community also, like get involved with the schools, get involved with the youth. That's one way to directly start impacting. But you and your friends who are all in your late 30s and 40s and bought a house in West Oakland and have parties and stuff with only each other, like, yeah, I criticize that.
I have a question. So I've brought this up with another guest. I was at a party at the Moxie. It was a tech mixer, but it also had like an artist component. A lot of the artists were Bay Area natives.
Yeah.
A lot of the techies were transplants, big tech. I work at Google, so like I have communities in both.
Yeah.
But I noticed that like there was a big separation from the tech folks and the artist folks. There was not a lot of commingling. You said that this is a problem. I agree. I have people in both arenas that I would consider my friends.
Yeah.
How do you think we can combat this, and how do you think that we can have more community and more collaboration between the two communities?
Yeah, I think this is something that I've like really noticed a lot, and this came to fruition for me actually in Kinfolks. So for context, Kinfolks is a community space, coffee shop, wine bar that I co-founded with Creighton Davis, another Bay Area native. He's from San Francisco. And I'll just give the quick background because it leads into your question. Basically, me and Creighton met some years ago. Creighton's like 8 or 9 years older than me. I'm 28. I think he just turned 37, maybe 38. And so when I came back to Oakland after college and things during the pandemic, him and I started linking up and just started talking about the state of Oakland, civic engagement, how to get folks more involved, like just understanding like the resources that we had here that we didn't have here, and like how do we get more folks to kind of be on that. And after some conversations, different things, like we were like, well, one of the things that we don't really have any physical spaces for folks to like kind of come together and do those things. And so fast forward a bunch, that's how like Kinfolks came to be. But again, yes, it's a coffee shop, wine bar, but like community was the initial thing. Creighton, like I said, from Bay Area, he works in tech. I've never actually worked like that type of like corporate things. I've done nonprofit stuff. I worked with OUSD, a lot of journalism, doc film work, and now I work with ESO Ventures, which I can talk about later, but we are trying to revitalize the small business economy in places like Oakland and wider. And so we have our own fund, we invest in businesses, we do free business incubators, all of that. And so what's been interesting about Kinfolks is that like when you open a coffee shop, like I'm not going to pretend like during the daytime and coffee shop hours, it's a selection bias of who's going to be in there, right? Who is able to work from home and work from a laptop and do those things. So that is going to attract a super wide range of crowd. And we know that, and that's baked into it. We don't have any unrealistic expectations. It'll be folks who are working in tech. It'll be artists who are working on things. It's a typical coffee shop in a place like this. But in the evening time when we're really focusing on our program, and that's when we can be more intentional about the things that we're trying to do. But one thing that I noticed just as it relates to like how this commingling and understanding of folks who again are transplants or new to the Bay Area and came for tech or whatever it may be, and folks who have been here for a long time, I think it's a big mentality thing. Early on, like I'm more dressed up right now, but most of the time if I'm here, like I'm in a black hoodie, some sweatpants. When we were early on in Kinfolks and I was like in there a lot, I'm not a barista. I'm not gonna pretend like I am, but I get in where I fit in. So one of the things that I was often doing, I would like help bus tables and, oh, you good? White people's tables, you need to take this, whatever, because I was just like, this is what I can actually do in the space. We're building staff, we're in our early stages, but folks who don't know me don't know I'm a co-owner. Like I'm not in there wearing a shirt that says boss or something, you know what I'm saying? Like
Co-founder.
I was actually, I don't know if I was surprised or what, but I took note of how folks would interact with me.
Based on who they thought you were.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was a lot of people who looked like me, who were there doing their tech job or whatever, and it's just like could care less. Like, I'm in here and it's like, okay, like, go ahead. And it was like not a very humane human interaction, not like a person-to-person thing. But I take note of those things. So I'm like, okay, cool. This is my first interaction with you. Note taken. You've been, you're in here every day. And it is what it is. And then later on, it's like, oh, you're one of the co-founders. Oh, I'm trying to do an event here. And like, oh, you went to Yale. Oh, do you know? Oh, we should do that. Yeah. It's like, no, I'm not interested in doing none of that because the way I was raised and the way my parents raised me and the things, like my dad is not a college graduate. My dad has, you know what I'm saying? He's been through it all. He's been through it all. He's been a victim of gun violence, all of those things. And so I know the lowest of lows that people go to, even, family, all of these things. And so I always treat everybody with the highest level of respect, and that's how I try and walk through the world when folks don't reciprocate that. So part of it, what I'm saying is like it's a mentality that folks come in here with. You can't come to Oakland, come to this new city, and have that I'm better than mentality, because one thing about Oakland and what its history and its reputation is that it's like the people are real and they feel these things, and if you rub folks the wrong way, then it's like this is what it is. And so I think a lot of folks feel that in a lot of spaces that I've gone to, again, where I've been invited as a guest for folks who are part of these circles. It's like I go in and I feel that same way, right? And I may have, different folks with me who don't fit the mold of what it is that they thought that this social circle that they were building fits, and it's a turnoff to a lot of folks and becomes very evident. So I think a lot of folks do need to kind of check the way that they're interacting with folks, and that's one thing. But then I think the other side of it is just finding, again, we open kinfolks as a space for there to be some overlap. So there's also folks who I've met from other places who are like, there was a dude in here earlier who moved out here from Detroit, and he was just cool. He came in, we started talking about things. We weren't talking about where do you work, what do you do, where did you go to school. We just like, oh, okay, we're talking about Detroit. I'm asking what food spots he liked, how he liked it. And we led with humanity. We led with a connection that has nothing to do with measuring each other's worth to whatever. He liked the background of the clothing stuff. He was like, oh, I didn't even know, nothing about this. Like, I want to get something just to support. He was like, I might not even ever wear this, but whatever it is. And so I think that has a lot to do with it. And also, you just got to understand, like, folks who are from here are, they dealing with like a pain. Like, it hurts to walk around and be like, damn, a lot of the people who are really from here is like, you go anywhere, like, the houseless population in Oakland is elder black people. That's the primary population of houseless folks, and people walking around who are from here and see that, they carry that pain. You may not even realize it, but it's like, damn, this shit sucks. Actually looking around and seeing a whole bunch of people who look like me, who I know are from here, they didn't move, and like going through those things, and then seeing other folks, go around their day business as usual, and like that also carries in. So when some folks may feel like, oh, folks are like angry, or it's just something about folks from Oakland who feeling like it's just one of those feelings that is hard to describe what it is, but I think it is rooted in a lot of pain and hurt and the way that it may manifest when interacting with other people. I mean, it's legitimate and it's valid, and you just got to understand that some folks, that's how they'll be maneuvering, and it kind of is what it is as well. So,
Yeah, so one of the questions, obviously, we were going to ask the origin story of kinfolks, but so we'll touch on that a little bit more. But obviously, you were born and raised in Oakland, so we know what brought you here. But what keeps you in Oakland?
I mean, family is a big thing, right? Both of my parents, fortunate enough to still be here. My dad worked for AC Transit till he retired 30 years. Like I said, my mom worked for OUSD. Now she works for the county, training other administrators, and trying to make sure that we have a education system that's inclusive of our history and our understanding, and really catering to black students primarily. And so that's what her focus is. Obviously, she's been an elementary school teacher and principal for all folks, but I mean, you look at the numbers, you look at the reading levels of black students compared to any other rate, like this were the lowest, not reading on grade level, not at math proficiency, and she's trying to fuse that gap. That's why it's her focus. It's not just that because she's a black woman, she's doing this. It's also like the data shows that this is who needs the most help, and I want to dedicate myself to that. And so, similarly, just kind of walking in their legacy and trying to have that impact. My pops, like I said, not a college graduate or anything like that, but he would coach sports, and he would do his part in trying to make sure that he was a father figure for a lot of my friends who didn't have fathers and things like that. So that's what keeps me here. Community, the people, and my parents. Because if it wasn't for that, I was just talking to my friends the other day. We were like, bro, the things that we enjoyed doing here, like, it's just no more. Like, it's just not there. And if it wasn't for that, realistically speaking, like myself and so many other folks, like, we wouldn't really be here. Like, I could get more bang for my buck going to where my family's from in Texas. And I'm cool with it. I spend time in Ghana all the time. I would be cool with being out there, but I have a lot of love for the people here, whether it's my blood family or chosen family who I've been around, for my whole life. And so I think that's the main thing. I'm just trying to hold on, recreate some spaces that we can, further build community, and try and connect with like-minded folks who are actually sincerely interested in our preservation and trying to give folks a quality access to life in whatever way you view that is. So,
what keeps you excited about what you do, and what challenges do you face as an entrepreneur?
I mean, so we ran my pop-up. Dehye is a clothing brand that I started based off my time studying abroad in Ghana in 2016. From a clothing perspective, right, I'm somebody who leads with trying to do things ethically and trying to build with my folks. There is nothing special about like China or Chinese people that says, oh, this was the hub of production and now everything is going to be made there. West Africa is current, sub-Saharan Africa and really the entire continent, but where I've been focused is currently, undergoing a lot of development, and there's a lot of different folks who are trying to keep their hand in the pot in some way, shape, or form. And so I realized that while I was out there. I had the pleasure of being out there for 5 months, living on campus, just interacting with folks and understanding more of that landscape. And I was like, I kind of got interested in fashion. I was like, is this something that's like actually feasible? And so I can spare all the details and say, like, this is something that, like, for me, when I'm making sales, I'm like, okay, cool, we're making sales, so it means we're gonna have more runway so that now I can order more fabric with, Portia, who was hitting me up, like, oh, you wanna do another order? Because it's about, the circular economy of actually understanding that, like, folks are really doing this skilled labor and have this, like, cultural preservation and heritage of hand weaving and hand dyeing and all these things. And I think, I was like, this is something that I think is really dope from a stylistic standpoint, but just actually putting together like a business model that is sustainable and that is not rooted in charity. I think it's always so funny when people are like, I can give you the whole thing. I was like, we do all of our cut and sew production in Accra, Ghana. We source fabrics from across West Africa. They're hand woven in Ghana, in Mali, and Burkina Faso, and Senegal. And, we're paying folks fair wages. Like I have playing right here videos that I've taken interacting with folks who are weaving the fabric, who are doing our cut and sew production. And I'm like, we're creating a circular economy so folks can, have sustain themselves and actually make sure, again, that you're not exploitive in the process. Sure. And oftentimes the first things people ask me is like, oh, okay, so like, do you do like charitable, like give back thing? And I'm like, so yes, we do those sides of things, but what I'm trying to get folks out of the mindset is like, we are so trapped in an exploitive capitalism society that folks don't understand. If you do business in an equitable and ethical way, there is no need for charity because folks are actually fairly compensated for the things that they're doing. Lifestyle. And you can do that. And I'm like, it just sucks when people say that because I'm like, I feel like you just didn't listen to anything that I just said in this process. And it's like, well, like, we'll do a portion of the proceeds. I'm like, it's baked into the way that this goes. If people are paid. And so, and again, I'm not saying that they're necessarily just like completely wrong for asking that, but I'm like, we have to, like the mindset of developing nations and specifically the entire continent of Africa, which is so diverse, is just like, oh, okay, but like, what about like the starving kids? Are you giving them? And I'm like, oh, man, like the propaganda around like development in the African continent is crazy. So for me, being an entrepreneur and doing these things, like, it's just very fulfilling to work with folks and actually understand the opportunity that's created. But I'm also somebody who's like, well, damn, I'm not quite doing enough. I need to figure out how to grow these things, not for the sake of, we got to scale because the venture capital model tells us that if we scale, we can do 10x and then we can be a unicorn and get acquired by H&M. Like that's not what that's not what my goal is. My goal is to build things equitably to, whether it's building more factories and doing things like sustainably and having them solar powered or whatever, and using regenerative farming for the cotton and using renewable energy for those things. Like I have a big vision just for this specific thing that we're doing. And, it's an audacious goal for sure, especially in a place where a lot of folks are afraid to invest and the infrastructure isn't there. But it's like, if you do study the history of China and you understand how rural and underdeveloped China was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and how quickly they did that. And I'm not saying follow China's model because there's a lot of pollution and a lot of things that were done wrong in that process. But the point that I'm making is there is an opportunity to grow, and if done in the right way, and if done equitably, and if like incorporating folks from the diaspora who are sincerely invested in doing things the right way, I think is a big opportunity to just grow something collective that is, again, sincerely rooted in the well-being of the people involved. And I feel like that's what a lot of folks are missing. So that's what like kind of motivates me as an entrepreneur, period. And this is just one thing that I'm doing. I have other interests. I mean, obviously, Kinfolks, it was the same thing. Kinfolks is like, again, it was rooted in community, right? We weren't like, nowhere on a piece of paper are we like, oh, how do we like create the next Starbucks and franchise? Like there's no Starbucks model. And if you know about how Starbucks get down, like you know, how exploitive they are to their coffee farmer, all of those things. And so, same thing, we're like, folks need a space to actually come together to host community events. And the product that we serve is coffee and wine and food, but it's like the experience and the community side of things, and if we can sustain ourselves. And even there, like, of course, we want to grow. We would love to have more space to have more of these events, and like doing it with the right people who are looking for space and are looking for opportunities to do things that, again, at the core are sincerely rooted in the well-being of community and building stronger communities that are taking care of the people. So like, you know, even at Kemp, you got it.
No, but would you consider what you're doing here to be fair trade? Or how do you feel about fair trade labeling?
I mean, a lot of those labels don't really mean anything, right? You look at the chocolate industry, Ghana, Nigeria, and the Ivory Coast produce over 70% of the world's chocolate, but they receive less than 10% of the revenue of the chocolate industry. So the raw product is, you know, this is how it goes. And a lot of efforts to like work with these places in Germany or whatever, like, oh, okay, like, can we set up a chocolate processing plant here? They're not interested in setting it because they're like, no, this is our part of this value supply chain. We want to control. You just do the raw products. We extract at the lowest possible price. We do all the processing, we do the branding, the markup, and then we sell it even back to you in your home country at a crazy markup. And so, but they'll smack fair trade on the thing because like they did get it direct. And so for me, I'm like, so many of these labels don't mean anything. It's just like folks who are like, oh, I do sustainable fashion. And I see folks who get like, oh, we're doing a sustainable fashion grant. It's like, okay, like, what's like the sustainability element? And it's like, oh, we use like organic cotton, but like all of our stuff is still made in like a factory.
Wherever,
So and so. And it's like, so nothing's hand woven, nothing's hand dyed, nothing is upcycled. And that's like the ethos of everything we do. Like everything behind us, this is all hand woven and hand dyed stuff just in this corner, but you can look all around and see there's upcycled denim. And then the other sick part about it is that most of that fashion, Ghana gets 15 million used fashion garments every week. Like 15 million are done there, and these big companies write it off as like this was a charitable donation, like they needed the clothes and we'll do it. And it's like, no, you know this stuff was defective, or you knew that it was so tattered that it wasn't able to be used, but you don't want to deal with your overproduction and overconsumption of things, and you can write it off as charity and not actually have to deal with the waste that it is. And so there are all of these different elements that we're trying to incorporate into the business model. And when we set out to do this, I didn't know that it was even that big. Like, I didn't even set out doing clothing design and saying like, oh, I'm a sustainable fashion designer. I never used the word sustainability. If you look at any of like my early press, I didn't even mention that word because folks out there are like, the team who wove this fabric, they're not like, oh, we're sustainable weavers. We're like, we're preserving our heritage, weaving on these traditional looms that we've always woven on. We're making new patterns and using like new colorways or whatever it may be, but it's not like, oh, this is like the sustainability in thing. That's just the way that things actually are. And so, the labels I'm less interested in. I'm more like, at any given time, if you want me to FaceTime into the factory, you can call my card and we can do that, and you can see how things are being made and how many folks are actually able to do that, how many folks are able to tell you any garment in here. I can show you a video of how that fabric was screen printed. I can show you the cut and sew process of how that one was upcycled. I can show you somebody weaving this we can do all of that, and that's what's most important, just the transparency in the process and showing that. So
that's beautiful. I asked about challenges that you face as an entrepreneur. You talked about a lot of the things that make this process beautiful. You're supporting an economy in Ghana. You're supporting economies in other sub-Saharan African countries. But what are some challenges that you might be facing?
I mean, a range of things. When you're, doing business in like developing nations, the logistics of things aren't the same, right? And so you have to understand how to navigate these things. How am I getting fabric from Mali to Accra by road? Well, it's a 27-hour drive. You got to find the transporters who will do it. You have to find the ones who will wrap the fabric in a way where all of like the red clay on the road doesn't damage the fabric by the time it gets there. Like, there are a range of things, but there have been things where it's just part of like the fashion space. You get things and it's like, oh, they did the size scale wrong, and now everything is like a size up. How are we going to correct that? Or you're dealing with hand-woven fabrics that are subject to human error because it's not a machine, it's an actual person. Some folks gravitate towards that and are like, oh, I actually like, these portions of it. Other folks, not so much. So it's like, how do you mitigate those kinds of things? So I think a lot of it is just being in an early stage industrial environment where I have made things in China. For example, some of the infrastructure in Ghana is not at the point where I'm somebody who wears hats every day.
Yeah.
Like I've outsourced to China or Pakistan to make hats because for one, I want to offer things at a price point that are accessible to my customers because not everybody is like, I'm gonna drop $150 minimum on a jacket, and that's fully understandable. Cool, I'm gonna do some other things, still incorporating brand elements, transparent, and let you know that this isn't made in Ghana. And I would love to get to the point where we can manufacture it there, but right now, it's this elaborate machine that allows for you to make a hat in this type of way. And so until we build towards that infrastructure, we'll work to get there. And so, I think that, and then you also then start realizing like, oh, DHL has a shipping monopoly on stuff, and I wish that there was like alternatives to doing, those type of things. And then you start really realizing like, oh, you may have went into this thing and like, I want to do fashion design. It's like, actually what I need to be doing is a shipping logistics company from this area, or what I need to be doing is like, the power done went out, like how do we do solar panel installations in places to do, like, it's a range of things that come out of it. But you got to spend your time and kind of cut your teeth doing those things. So there are challenges, but I think there's lessons to be learned both for my business and just more wider understanding the landscape and seeing like what's the next step that folks can take, because 60% of the world's working age population is going to be on the African continent by 2030. We're only 5 years away from that, and their population is only growing. And so what does that mean for the future when a lot of, places in Europe, for example, are aging out and populations are decreasing? What is migration going to look like? What is, production going to look like? There's a lot of things that if you're actually following trends of what's happening, you'll understand that like this wave is coming one way or another. And so you got to understand, again, I'm not speaking from this capitalistic standpoint. You got to understand how to make money during it. I'm saying like, I hope folks will understand how to do this right this time around. And there's a way to go about it. And I just hope the right folks get involved. And I don't have all the answers, but I'm trying to figure it out and kind of learning by doing in the process. So.
So with that same subject, what inspired you to start your clothing line? And what would you like to convey through your clothing brand?
I was just inspired by going to the fabric markets in Ghana. Like I said, I did a semester there my junior year at Yale, 2016, and I'm seeing all these different fabrics and things that I hadn't really seen before. I've seen, mud cloth and things, obviously, but like I didn't realize that they were doing like these hand-woven fabrics. And I never heard of a fabric called fugu, which most of the fabrics that I use are, and it's in the upper west region of Ghana. So it's not kente that a lot of folks know about. It's like different style, and I'm like, oh, this is like super cool. How do we repurpose this, and rather than be used like the traditional ways, like we can make things that I think me and my friends will like. So that's kind of like what the inspiration came from. But initially it would just be making clothes for myself. Ghana is a place that like tailoring as an art form or as an occupation is super, super prevalent, right? We had 14 dorm rooms on campus or however many. Everyone had to live in, like had a tailor who was there. Any block that you go to, like you're gonna find a barber, you're gonna find an air braider, you're gonna find a tailor. Like tailoring is just super, super, super common. And that's the way that they go about making clothes. You get your measurements taken, you make it, whether it's your Sunday outfit or you go into a wedding or whatever, like that's just how things are. So it was clear that the skill set of, sewing operation was there, but then it's like, okay, how do you actually get things produced? I had one of my friends who I met at the University of Ghana. She's Ghanaian, B. Arama. She has a company called Threaded Tribes, and they were just getting started in 2016. I didn't start my brand until 2021. So it was, 4 or 5 years that had passed. Because I was a college student with no money, and businesses take startup capital. And also I was like, I had to go back, get asked enough times where I got this outfit from and could I make it for somebody else before I actually started it. And then I was like, okay, cool. Let me reach out to B and see how she's doing things. Oh, it's mutually beneficial if like the both of us actually try and like work with this dude who just started his production facility, because he's looking for more clients to sustain him. And so again, just spending time there, forming natural friendships with folks. I wasn't out there thinking like, I'm in Ghana to make a clothing brand. I was just like, oh, everybody tailor, I'm gonna get some clothes made because I got all this fabric and everything. And so, that's how things started. And then again, in the process, then you're driving along the coast and you're like, oh, what is all this trash? And you're learning about the fashion waste that gets dumped there. And then you're like, oh, let me see like who is doing what. And it's like, oh, I found a lady who's doing denim, and that's like all she sells. And I'm like, well, this is durable. You could wash it, you could dye it, whatever. Let's start doing upcycled denim stuff. So like everything is just kind of like flowed naturally, but again, having the mindset of like just seeing issues and trying to find a way to fix them, and really have been experimenting and casting a wide net and doing a range of things. I think like my brand, I mean, like everything is ethically produced and trying to have that sustainability element, but like I'm not like a fashion designer. I'm not a graphic designer, none of that. I'm just like trying to do things in a way that's like righteous in my mind, but also just makes sense. So like I have a super wide range of stuff because I just got a super wide range of ideas, and I want to see if we can do it. So
How do you come up with the silhouettes for the clothing?
A range of things. Sometimes it's just like I have stuff that I like how it fits, and I'll send it out there and we'll deconstruct it.
Oh, they'll make a pattern.
Yeah, and
that's
then
cool.
I have a pattern grader who we work with, and then they'll deconstruct, make patterns, scale it from extra small to 2X, whatever it is that you need. So there are definitely, when you tap in with the right folks, there are folks who are doing pattern grading and doing production, and there was more folks who I thought initially, there are more folks than what I initially thought, rather, who are actually like doing production. And I think folks have been pretty cool with like collaborating and working.
Fun fact, my dad was a tailor in India. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a skill set. It is a skill set.
They don't do it no more.
It's a skill set.
Does your dad make like clothing from scratch?
I actually have never seen him do it.
Ah.
By the time like I was born and stuff, he had already left for America.
Got you.
So.
Got you.
So where are we? Can you tell us the origin story of Kinfolks, being a small business owner in Oakland?
Yeah.
Aside from being a small business owner, what other roles hold significance in your life?
Yeah, so Kinfolks' origin story is in 2015, I met Creighton Davis. He's from San Francisco originally. I'm from Oakland originally, but we met in New York. Creighton was a law student at NYU. I was an undergrad at Yale, and we met at the Jackie Robinson Foundation Conference. Creighton was volunteering with his students, both of Black Law Students Association. I was potentially interested in law school. We met, found out we were both from the Bay Area, and you connect on LinkedIn, whatever. Years later, pandemic happens. We reconnect because I've been writing a lot of stuff about policing in Oakland. Like I said, I went to journalism school. He was chairing CPAB, Community Police Advisory Board, which is really just an organization that's does a lot of work to get neighbors to know each other more, so they don't have to call the police for something that doesn't require a police.
Like the first version of Nextdoor or something?
I would not just. Right, just knowing your neighbor. No, it was literally just he would set up on the street and be like.
Oh, super cool. So very involved, very small, small tight-knit community.
He would go to those areas that I'm saying folks wouldn't go. I'm pulling up on 73rd and Bancroft, and I'm getting into these neighborhoods, and I'm they're hosting things, and so it was more so about how do you find ways for folks to not get police involvement for little things that you can solve without. And so that's what made us start linking up again and just talking about things. And we were just talking about civic engagement in the city, the state of the community. A lot of different, local elections and things were coming up. And we was man, there's got to be more people who are more interested in these things too. Yeah. And so that kind of evolved into some thought processes. Creighton had long thought about opening a community space, but really a coffee shop style space to kind of host events and programming around these things. Similarly, it had been something that was on my mind, and I really liked. I'm not really a wine drinker, but it was this place in the Bronx when I lived in New York. We would go called the Lit Bar, and it was a bookstore that was a wine bar, but it was just a cool concept of it was a bookstore, but they would be open till 10:30, 11, and people would just kind of be in there, and people would just talk to one another, right? Oh, right. It's just you pull up, you may have a book, you may be shot. It was just a cool environment. So we were okay, what if this seems like something that could be feasible? Ended up finding the location. It was formerly Tertulia Coffee Company. A lot of folks don't know, but downtown Oakland, retail commercial space is still at 30% vacancy. And on the other side of the pandemic, it was even more. This space had been vacant. They closed actually before the pandemic. Then the pandemic hit, so they had been closed down for over 2 years. We were able to work something out to actually kind of open the space, and initially it was just going to be a pop-up experience, right? They had the coffee equipment there because it was already a coffee shop. We had to do some maintenance and upgrades. We raised a little money from our quite literally friends and family. Shout out my cousin Mike and Adrian, and so. But folks who believed in what it is that we wanted to do. Creighton is an attorney also. I was working full time, I think at the time. with policy link. And so we had full-time jobs, but this was very much, again, we did not open it like, all right, this is our ticket out.
Right.
We were like, ooh, are we gonna have the capacity to actually do this and figure it out? And we were like, well, let's just see. And if not, like, we had like some favorable terms where we could leave if we wanted to. And so, but when we opened, when we opened, it was terrible because that was when all the flooding had happened. So in like the first week, it was like crazy torrential downpour. A whole bunch of stuff was flooding. Trees fell, so people were not actually even coming out. And it's also like when it's raining, people don't want to come out anyways. So we were like, rough start, like let's see. But over time, things picked up. Obviously, word spread. People found out about it. Honestly, we didn't really have like that great of a social media presence initially. We were just kind of like, if you know, you know. And, you know, there are a range of different things that like have led to now, you know, us about to close in on our second year, approaching our third year. January 5th, that'll mark the 2-year anniversary of us being open. So many learning lessons that I can talk about. I'm somebody who was from East Oakland. I grew up off of 98th by Bishop O'Dowd. I had never spent this much time in downtown Oakland because I was on the East Coast for like 6.5 years. And like I said, I went to Oakland Tech, where I was like, I go to Tech, I go to practice, I go back to East Oakland. I wasn't outside on the streets. And downtown Oakland really didn't have much to do in my childhood, right? It was like, you have the parades and things, but like the downtown Oakland after like 5 p.m.
It's like prostitutes, drug addicts.
It was just, it just was no businesses open. Like,
I remember I was having a conversation with one of my neighbors when I first moved here. They had lived here for 15 years. They're not a local, but they said like prior to like 2008, 2009, it was just like people doing drugs. There was a lot of prostitution.
For sure.
They said that in the building I lived in, there used to be a pulley and people would drop the drugs down to the people, put the money in, and then they would like send this shit back up. Like, I don't know. I don't know.
Possible. Because like this area that has been rebranded to like Uptown and Old Oakland is like proximity to West Oakland, where Acorn projects are in Ghost Town. So it was just a lot of things happening in that era. But like when you was ask anybody who grew up in Oakland, you're like,
they don't want to claim downtown. No, I know that.
Downtown, like honestly, when I was in high school and like even before that, like if you saw somebody in downtown, it's like, what are they doing in downtown? They was in downtown. It's like, they like, that's sad. Like they felt.
Yeah, it's not good. Yeah.
Right. It's like not associated with anything positive. And so I said that to say like Kinfolks has just been so interesting for me because it's allowed for me to explore my city in a new way. Like I said, I've met a range of people for better or for worse. I've interacted with way different kinds of people. Like most high schoolers are not coffee shop. Right. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to a coffee shop and doing no work in high school. I went to college.
That's like really interesting. I'm from Kentucky, and so like in Kentucky, high school kids do hang out at coffee shops. Like we hang out at coffee shops, we hang out at like restaurants, and I think we have more expendable income because we're not in the Bay. But
probably,
like
right. You could probably work a student job and
exactly. And I also think like, in other neighborhoods in Oakland, like Piedmont or like Rockridge, I do see teenagers going out to coffee shops, to delis, to cafes. Yeah, a little bit of that around here too, but yeah. I mean, it's not as much, you know.
Right. And so for us, I was just like, okay, especially daytime, nighttime, I hadn't been here that much, so it's been cool to really, like I said, explore the city, meet new people, understand more about the landscape of like what's happening here. Just me speaking from like a personal level in the process of building Kinfolks. I'll also say I now split time between Oakland and LA. So I want to make clear, and I always say this, that like Kinfolks being successful and being like a functional business that has grown has really been the work of Creighton. Somehow balancing being a full-time attorney and doing that, because so many of the aspects of running a brick and mortar space means that like so much of your business is happening physically and you have to be there. I was here when we first started, but like very soon after I moved down to LA, and so I've always been back and forth, but I just wasn't physically there as much. So I'm just also making clear that like I'm giving credit where credit is due.
Beautiful.
But it's just been interesting building out like a team of folks and us, not having no experience in the brick and mortar spaces and the food and beverage spaces, and just really, just kind of talking to folks, explaining the vision that we have. For myself, I'm like, listen, this is like what we want these things to do. I can use my own intuition and logic to try and help and shape things in the right way and like understand my own like business acumen. But like, this is like a work in progress learning experience of a two-way street. So let's work through things, let's understand, let's explain, and let's come to a consensus about why we should do things the way that we do. And, you know, that's like in all of the decisions. But, you know, one of the things that has remained true is like we're a community space. So like one of the things early on, Creighton was like, all right, let's do this community cup. There are so many houseless folks who are coming into the shop who need help. We'll give customers the opportunity to pay it forward. So like it's already covered if folks want a coffee or whatever it may be. But now 2 years in, one of the conversations that we're having that's interesting is like, as much as we, again, are here for the community and understand how much our houseless community is going through it, you also like, okay, but like, what does it do for folks who are working with us, again, folks on the team, and like every day they see somebody who comes in with this crack pipe and is heavily addicted to this drug, and it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like that takes a toll on you, and it's like putting a Band-Aid day in, day out on somebody giving the, you know, water or whatever it may be. It's like, it has an impact on you. It's a sadness that folks feel, especially when you're an empathetic person, but in understanding policies of like, okay, you have somebody go in the bathroom and they're there for 2 years and you open it and clearly they done
mess the bathroom up.
Messed themselves up, OD'd in the bathroom or something, you know what I mean? Like any of these type of things. I'm just saying, like, there are so many things that folks don't understand. Like
something I've never thought about in a.
Oh yeah. Like you would not think, and it's like, oh, you know, we good people. Of course you use the bathroom. Like make sure you do cool, and then it's like, it never came out. And then it's like, oh, you just smoked something in the bathroom. It smells like something, or you just, you know what I'm saying? Like there are a range of different things, and again, Creighton is super empathetic, as am I, and so you feel for folks. And then you have to find that balance, right? Because then the folks who are like, look, I'm working here 8 hours a day and I'm now feeling unsafe because this dude done came in here and this, or I can't just, and so then just like, okay, how do you do that? And then you also like, what is the city really doing to support folks?
Bathroom accessibility is really difficult here.
Oh yeah, and my guy Elliot, who I recently connected with in person, but I've known virtually, he's one of the people who runs the macro program. For those who don't know what macro is, what is the acronym? Basically, it's like a non-emergency number that's ran by the fire department, so that if somebody's having a mental health crisis or, you know, like dealing with the issues with like houseless folks, you can call them. It's not a police presence. They're like first responders into the fire department. They're going to try and mitigate the situation. Somebody OD'd, somebody that's like, you know, got some bad drugs and having a trip, like there are the folks who do that. But one of the things that he is standing 10 toes down on business about right now is public toilets.
Yes,
and
please.
Like, if you have to manage it or whatever it may be, cool. Because he was like, one of the main calls that Macro gets is from business owners who are like, somebody locked themselves in the bathroom. I don't know what's going on in there, but it smells like smoke. Or somebody locked themselves in the bathroom, they're not responsive. I've been knocking. Can you feel, like all of these different things? And like I said, everything we're doing is rooted in the collective well-being of the community and trying to understand that, but it's a lot of complexities that you got to navigate there that I wasn't expecting to have.
If I'm remembering correctly, you guys have like a PIN code for your bathrooms, right? Is there nothing to install like after 2 hours of it being locked?
We wouldn't want to unlock the bathroom. I'd see violation.
After 2 hours of being
Right.
You should never unlock
I mean, we have like a key, I think, so technically you can, but it's the PIN code is to get in. Then there's a bolt lock.
Right.
So everyone has a bolt lock that is from the inside.
It makes sense for the staff to be able to access the bathroom, but like if I was a patron and somebody had locked themselves in the bathroom, they were doing whatever, and then I'm opening up, the door is automatically unlocked after 2 hours, and I open the door and go into that, then that's locking.
There's no way you're in there for 2 hours.
Right. I mean,
no, I'm saying like if I open the door and go into that because it automatically
after 2 hours, it's just like a captive portal for internet. After you use it for an hour, you got to buy something else to get a new code or whatever it may be. Like,
you can't do that with the bathroom.
I was just thinking like there has to be, you know what I mean?
Like they can access the bathroom.
But still the deadbolt.
But it's the deadbolt that does it. That's what it is. Like deadbolts operate like that. So again, it's just a lot of things. And again, with me not being here, every time I come back and I'm talking to folks who was working with us and I'm just hearing another story, I'm like, oh, like, you know what I mean? And so, but the thing is, the community, like folks who live in Oakland understand, right? Like they're like, oh,
it's normal. This is another day in the life.
Right. This is another day in the life. I understand, and a lot of folks are operating with empathy as well and bearing with folks. It's not like folks are like, oh, y'all letting people use it's just
you let people use the bathroom. That's so hard. Bathroom accessibility. Even a lot of the BARTs close down their bathrooms because they don't want to deal with it either.
Exactly. In San Francisco, they have some programs. I don't frequent San Francisco much, but I was just there for a wedding like last week, and they had like a bathroom monitor, and there was a line of people who were standing in line, and they're like, yeah, people need to use a bathroom, and they want privacy to do it, and they will work with you to do that. And they were like, this is not, a drug haven. This is like, use the bathroom, you probably got a time limit, you get out, there's somebody monitoring, and you do that. But again, a small business that has bootstraps.
The capacity to do bathroom monitoring.
That is doing coffee. You know what I'm saying? It's our primary means of sustainability.
Yeah.
Like, that's when it's like, it's unfair of you to then ask of the folks who are on the team with you of like, hey, like, you know what, now you're also
a bathroom monitor.
Bathroom manager. You know what I mean? Like, it's difficult, but and it's a lot of other places are not dealing with that, especially not on this level.
Yeah.
And so, it's just been interesting. And again, that is just one small facet of it. But I think, those are decisions that you make when you're like having a space that is really for the community, and you are somebody who is trying to do your best to do right by people. It gets it gets some nuance in there. So
I'm sure it comes with the good, bad, and the ugly.
Of course.
The other part of this question is, what are some other roles that hold significance to you outside of being an entrepreneur or a business owner?
I mean, so I work full-time still with ESO Ventures. ESO Ventures started off Eastside Oakland Ventures, and they started off with like a grant, I think for $5,000 to revitalize like small businesses in what I'd never heard it called the MacArthur Corridor, but it's just MacArthur from 73rd to 82nd. It's a strip of a whole bunch of businesses. Some of them are motels. That used to be like the trucking route. So before the 580 freeway the 580 freeway doesn't allow trucks, but those freeways were built, they would go down MacArthur. That was the main street. So there's a lot of motels for rest stops. Then it's like, different businesses, but businesses in any hood area is check cashing, is liquor stores, is corner stores. And they're like, okay, how do we do more? When I was a kid, it was actually more. Dr. Sweeney, I don't even know if he's still open. His sign is still there, a dental office. There was a Suzuki dealership right there that would sell, like, it was just more things, Fiore's, music, all of these places, and like a lot of those places have closed down and moved away. So even in my lifetime, I was able to like patronize these businesses and support. Now you got Uhuru House has been there for some time. They have Homies Empowerment, like helping out formerly incarcerated folks. And some of these things are newer, but the point I'm making is they were like, how do we get like some businesses going in this area? For folks who aren't familiar, this is also like 73rd at the end of this corridor is where it like meets the corner of Eastmont Mall as well, and that's where like the Black Cultural Zone is, and they're doing a lot of work around community land trust and helping long-term Black residents secure housing. And so basically ESO Ventures has spiraled up and grown to the point where we got some funding, and we basically partner with cities and municipalities and community colleges. We run free business incubators, and then we have a fund to help small business owners either start their businesses or grow their businesses. But again, we're not like, hey, what's the next tech AI enabled company that we can have this venture capital approach? It's like we actually have our own lender's license, so we give up to $10,000 at 0% interest, and then like $100,000, like 5 to 7% interest.
It's very good.
Yeah, if you know what an SBA loan right now is like for a six-figure thing, you understand how good of a rate that is. And so, like that's what we're doing. And again, it's just so interesting because like, I go to like some VC conference things, sometimes it's work-related things, and they're like, oh, so like, what are y'all doing this community thing? And I'm like, while y'all are building the next $1 million company in San Francisco, y'all are acting like people are not out on the street overdosing on the regular on meth and heroin and all of these things. And it's like, you actually need more small businesses and things to revitalize economy and actually build an environment. Like y'all are cool with being on the 30th floor and, trying to get to this like next thing. And it's like, that is not what gives a place a local charm. That is not what community building is about at all. And so business is a very important part of that, because it's also like, that's how you hire locally, right? Tech companies can now hire from wherever, but Kinfolks does not hire from wherever. We hire folks who are local, who are part of the community, and are trying to make things happen in that way. So full-time, that's what I work with ESO Ventures. Still entrepreneurship related, but just on a different side. I run all our marketing, communication stuff, and then some. But it's fulfilling because it's like, cool, it's something that I'm committed to.
Yeah, but when I say roles, like you carry the role of a son. I think you would consider yourself to be a community builder. So can you delve more into roles like this that are not like related to business, entrepreneurship?
The ones that don't pay you.
Yeah, I mean, I fish. I enjoy fishing. Me and my brother, you know, we get together and do that. I'm an athlete. I hoop. Baseball was my main sport, like I said earlier, but I still enjoy playing basketball with folks. I mean, I get in where I fit in. If folks need me for something, I try and make myself available, you know, especially as it relates to youth and just trying to get folks to understand the opportunities that do exist out there. Yeah, I don't even know if I consider myself a community builder. I guess, right, Kim Folks is a community space. I just don't really never use that term if I'm a community builder. I'm just like, I just try and show love to folks and create opportunities. I'm like, I could buy something from a big company or I could buy something from the homies. And even if the homies thing isn't the same quality or ease of getting it to me or whatever, I'm willing to make that sacrifice to do that because I want to support folks that I know. Yeah. And it's like, that's kind of like the way that I'm like trying to exist. And like, you know, you got to be very intentional about that because let's be real, Amazon makes it really easy to order something and it'd be at your doorstep and the next thing. And at certain things, right? Like I don't have no friends with toilet paper companies. I may still get my stuff from them or I go to Costco or whatever. But if it's like, if I'm buying some clothes or if I'm buying some cologne or if I'm buying some, you know what I mean? Like all of those things, like I'm trying to find folks who I may have a personal connection to in any way. And if it is something that like, okay, like I don't wear, I don't know, a purse or whatever, but like I will repost and I will share and I will give gift guides and tell folks to do those things. So that's kind of how I try and go about things because I really appreciate when folks do the same thing for me. But I'm not doing it in hopes of getting anything in return. I'm just doing it because at the end of the day, if you have something that you need or you're buying something that you want, you have an opportunity to make a decision about how you do that. And I think conscious consumerism is something that like I try and like, you know, talk to folks about. But I mean, I do a range of different things. Like I said.
You've dropped the word community quite a bit. So what does community look like for you here in Oakland? Yeah. And then, unrelated or related, but what's something that you would change about Oakland?
So what does community look like? I mean, community can show up in whatever way, shape, or form it is, right? It could just be me and somebody I grew up with, my boy Stanley this morning, we ran the lake together. That's community. We was out of breath, so we wasn't even doing much talking, but it's just like we engaged in this activity, we making it happen. We felt like we got a good start to our day. We got to see folks, be present. I saw some folks along the way that I nodded to because like I said, I was too out of breath to talk to, but we did that. And so just being seen and showing up with a positive attitude, like that it could be as simple as that. Or it could be more intentional of like, we're doing a deliberate event at Kim Folks around wellness. We had some on Monday. Shout out Moses. He teaches Pilates down the street. Didn't really know him that well prior to this. I think he's from New York, but we did an event in collaboration. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the sister's name, but there were two black women who have their own like nail salon practices, and it was called like manicure, and it was dudes in there getting manicures while talking about like wellness and overall state of just how they are and stuff. And so that was something they put together. Shout out Rachel, events manager at Kim Folks. Shout out Bianca, who was general manager, who would just be holding things down, but like they really understand the vision of things that we try to, you know, set out and do, and they've been making those things happen. But that was like, oh, this is a cool example of community. I really didn't know that many people in there, but folks showed up just open-hearted, like, you know, let's talk about it. Let's get it going. And I didn't really know many black women who had their own like nail salons that were doing that, so that was also cool. To see them, and I'm just mad I'm not remembering the name of their business. I have the flyer and I can share it later, but appreciate y'all.
If you send it to us, we can add it in the comments for this video.
Okay, cool.
So what's something you would change about Oakland?
What would I change about Oakland? So one of the things that I realized since living in Los Angeles is that LA just takes a lot better care of its public spaces. So, like, I'm in Inglewood. I could go to Darby Park, which has a reputation of being a park that had a whole bunch of bloods and all of these different things. But the joke about Inglewood has even since that time period, it's like, don't let the nice lawns fool you, because folks, well, Inglewood actually has like a law that you have to have like a well-kept front yard.
Okay.
But when you go to the park, like, whereas when I go to parks that I grew up playing in, the grass is hella overgrown, and if it's baseball, the infield dirt hasn't been dragged or watered one time. Like, grass is always mowed all the time. Track is maintained, and you can run track. It's 80 plus older black folks playing pickleball 3 times a week, and the tennis courts are well maintained. And you know, when the city actually invests in the maintenance of things, it encourages community to get out and do things. And when the community goes out and does things, people actually create social connections and are actually making stronger neighborhoods and communities and things. So those things kind of go hand in hand. Because there's even places that I grew up playing with, like my mama loves tennis. We would go to Burkhalter Park in East Oakland off of like 73rd by where the rock quarry is. And it's like, that tennis court has not had no type of maintenance, washing, anything. I would be surprised. Whereas the other day, I linked up with my guy, Rich Knight, and he was like, we play tennis sometimes, or just something we just be getting back into. And we went to the tennis courts that we normally go to, and they were closed down because the whole tennis court was wet with soapy water because they're washing these public tennis courts because they're maintaining these things. And so, like, that is one thing that I wish, right? City government has a large budget. So much of the budget is going to things that nobody in the community is actually wants it to go to. But like maintenance of public space, and that, you know, that extends to potholes and all of those things. But I do think like parks specifically, like I was saying, my youth and things, even when I was younger, my dad would take us to Sunnyside Park on 98th and Bancroft, and we could hoop at that park. Or people would go to Mosswood and you could hoop out there and all these things. And now it's just like, it's just like the maintenance isn't there.
That one block near Kinfolks, isn't that slated for a park?
That's what I have heard as well. I'm not quite sure the status of it or what's actually happening, but right there between like 18th and 19th, between the Fox and the Uptown. And I mean, it would be nice if it was.
A few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of big open space. So that's the other thing about Oakland. There's like a lot of land and a lot of opportunities to do things and build outdoor space. And
so you're in Inglewood now?
But again, back and forth.
What you shared in regards to just them maintaining. You don't think the SoFi Stadium had anything to do with that?
So I talked to folks who were from there because I was curious, and it was like, not so. What's interesting? So in my area.
Because we got teams leaving.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
Like, so like they built SoFi Stadium, then they built. So for one, the Forum has been there for a long time. So they have already a big performance venue. Professional sports teams used to play there. So there's always been a draw, right? Because the Forum is like, most people cannot perform. Granted, there's the sports side of things too, but most artists are not big enough to sell a show at SoFi. Since I've been there, the only people who have performed there were Beyonce, Taylor Swift, and The Weeknd. Do y'all think about how big they are? Like, we saw SZA. SZA's a huge artist. She performed at the Forum. So they've long had a draw in Inglewood, right across the street from SoFi, that had those things. I think that Inglewood, especially in the areas like directly around it, doesn't actually have like a whole bunch of big like apartment buildings, and you won't see a whole bunch of like high-rise buildings being built. It's a lot of single-family homes, and Inglewood, from my experience, is far more black than Oakland. There's a lot more black-owned businesses. There's a lot more festivals and things to do, and I feel like it's actually been maintaining that. Now, granted, SoFi is very new. I don't know what the trend will be in either direction, but I know like on my block where I live, like I was happy to rent I'm in a single family home that I'm renting from a lady who grew up in that house and told me she will never sell that house. And it's like I believe it's in like a trust for her thing. And I was like, okay, perfect. I don't feel, you know, it was like, I don't feel like I'm buying and you know, because it's some complexities there in the same way that it is in Oakland. So, but it's early stage, and I'm curious. There are certain things that are, of course, coming, but like they did open like a new gym, but like the gym is like 80, maybe 60% black, 30% Latino, 10% white, and Asian. So.
Also, shout out to Issa Rae. She's been doing a lot down there as far as development.
So she's super involved in Hilltop Coffee, AJ and Austin from Slauson & Co. Yeah, they are the folks who are involved with Hilltop. She just opened Somerville.
Restaurant Summer, yeah.
Yeah, Somerville.
It is Somerville.
Yeah.
I used to also live in LA.
Gotcha.
But I was like Burbank.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's folks who are doing a lot, and I also just think like, I don't know, the city infrastructure in Inglewood, I feel like works with folks to get things to happen. Whereas like sometimes, a lot of times, it's very difficult to make things happen in working with the bureaucracy in Oakland. You can have folks who come in with the resources and a plan. Even like, for example, like Blind Spotting and the folks who made that, like Raphael Casal and David Diggs and all of those dudes who are Bay Area natives who are really invested in doing things here. And people were like, oh, they didn't even film the season. And it's like, they tried so hard to do this. There was so much revenue that the city could have received to film these things, and like the city was just not cooperating and making it doable. And they're like, okay, we have to do this. We got a time limit. We got to do these things. And they didn't. But then on the flip side of that, look at all the things they're doing. They have all these new organizations. They started this collective. They're working with the city because it's like, we don't want to have to go through this again. But it's like, again, it's the people who have a love for the city and want to see those
taking on the burden
happen.
and dealing with the challenges and jumping through the hoops to make sure that we can do it in the future.
And it's like, y'all should just be focused on writing y'all next movie and continuing to, get y'all stories out and doing those things. But now it's like you have become a bureaucratic mover and shaker and doing those things to try and figure those things out. So, it shouldn't have to be like that. But again, it always falls on the people who are making those things happen.
Ooh, all right. So you were talking about how things are exceedingly hard to manage and navigate here in Oakland due to some factors with the city and like permits being hard to attain and this sort of thing. Yeah. So my next question was going to be, what are some challenges Oakland is currently facing, and what are your hopes for Oakland's future?
Oakland is facing a range of different challenges, some of which are unique to Oakland, but a lot of which are just indicative of the times that we're in right now. I think, we're dealing with inflation, we're dealing with a lot of political uncertainty, we're dealing with just historical inequities starting to like manifest in ways that folks probably should have expected but didn't, right? It's like, oh, who would have known that like young folks would be bipping cars when the state's education, the education system in the city has long been underfunded and classes have been overcrowded, and you take away early childhood education and Head Start programs and all that. Those things manifest, and now those folks who didn't have that programming are getting into adulthood. It's like, oh, folks aren't prepared to, do different things. And so, sorry, the root question was, because I was about to go on a longer tangent. I just want to make sure I answer the question correctly.
So the root question is, what are some challenges that you feel Oakland is currently facing? Yeah. And then what would you like to see for Oakland's future? Yeah.
So, Oakland is a city that has a lot of tax revenue of all times, where there's property taxes. Trust me, they get their business tax money. Like, you know what I'm saying? And taxes are supposed to be used to benefit like the people. And so honestly, this is my honest opinion, like there needs to be some type of outside investigation firm. No, literally, I was about to say, who does an audit of Oakland's finances.
What are they doing with the money in the city?
Yeah, because a lot of folks don't, you don't really know. You see like, okay, what is this commission doing and how does that actually manifest in the real world? What are these folks doing? And again, so many of the things that make Oakland have nothing to do with things that are happening in this like bureaucratic processes. Again, it's Raphael and David and Pete Nix and Ryan Coogler getting together to make this film thing happen more. And that's going to generate way more tax revenue for the city because folks are going to be able to do, but like they are not employed by the city. And then it's like, oh, okay, the team of Kin folks is providing meals and coffee to houseless folks in the region who come in every single day and can get something from us. And it costs us money and it costs a big emotional turmoil on folks who are like doing these things. But again, and so I would just like for the city to do what it's supposed to. I don't think it's a crazy ask. I'm like, y'all have funding to do these things. You need to figure out how to utilize this funding more efficiently to actually serve the people whose tax revenue you're taking to make those things happen. And that's across all of the board, right? Like, yes, there's street paving, and there's park maintenance, and there's, programming for youth, and there's more funding to education, and there's early childhood education, and there's all of these different things that, statistically speaking, and from a sociology background, show to be indicators of more positive outcomes for folks. But time and time again, folks aren't investing in those things. So I would just like for folks to actually understand there's so much resources to support what works, and you should do that. So yeah.
Okay, so we'll jump right into our rapid fire round.
Yeah.
You can't say kinfolks, but I'll just say that every other person almost has at least mentioned kinfolks once that we've interviewed.
Yeah.
But what are your top, your favorite staples? Coffee shops, restaurants, bars?
Well, I said earlier, Bake Sale Betty's. If I'm here, I'm gonna go there. Los Comales, that's the taqueria I grew up going to. Cafe Noir is new. Homegrown Marissa. It's off 35th and MacArthur. Mm-hmm. Those are all food places. I feel like I'm forgetting some. EOYDC, East Oakland Youth Development Center, get involved. They do a lot of positive work for the community, have been embedded in the community, actually in East Oakland for decades, and just, I think those are my staples.
All right, I have a last question for you. I'm going to let you go. Yeah. We see the sun's gone down as we've done this interview. Yeah. But how would you describe Oakland in just 3 words?
That's our favorite question.
Resilient, I will say authentic, and I say cultured, and I mean that arts cultural, it's just a lot of culture, even still without the changes that's still here. So resilient, authentic, cultured.
These are our words we've already heard.
I believe it.
Well, we appreciate your time today. Thank you for, making the time for us. Very impromptu. Yeah. So really, really thank you.
Got to drive to LA in the morning.
Yeah. And we just wanted to help the audience understand where they can find you, how they can support your ventures, and how they can find those.
Yeah. My personal page is everything is just my real name, Akintunde Ahmad. Probably don't know how to spell that. That's at AKINTUNDE AHMAD. Kinfolks is Kinfolks with an XOAK, so KINFOLXOAK. Dehye clothing brand. That's ADEDEHYE. And we'll be here through the holiday season. I don't know when this is coming out, but our pop-up's at 485 9th Street in Oakland. Kinfolks is on the corner of 20th and Telegraph in Oakland.
If your pop-up's no longer here, we have months of content. So if it's no longer here, where can they find the clothing otherwise? On the website?
Yeah,
on the
website. So
Beautiful.
ADEDEHYE.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in to Dear Oakland.